All right, and welcome to Metzer Monday. That's right. Madden Benz Unfiltered today without Mark Madden because Mark is coming back from England. So Brian Metzer, the Pittsburgh Penguins radio network, is kind enough to be filling in for us today. We're going to talk Penguins today. It's going to be primarily a Penguins half hour for Unfiltered today, and we're brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Try one of their 500 available craft beers, grab some food, including the fabulous Steak and a Stone, and watch Pittsburgh sports all year long on one of their many TVs directly across from PNC Park at the end of the Clemente Bridge. Mike's Beer Bar is also the sponsor of our Friday football live stream with myself and Mike DeCourcy at 9 a.m. on Fridays. Had our biggest viewing week of the year after the game against the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday. Watch us in advance of the Packers game on Sunday night. Our pregame podcast as well. Mike sponsors that too. Meet me at Mike's. All right, man, so let's get to our first comment of the day from Johnny Knoxville. The Steelers didn't lose a game yesterday. And actually, the Penguins didn't lose on Saturday night. The Penguins have won more games than they've lost. They're 4-2. The Steelers are 4-2. Mets, if you told me at any point this season that the Penguins would have the same record as the Steelers, I would have said, oh, my God, what happened to Aaron Rodgers? So here we are 6 games in, and things going a little bit better than expected. Why?
Well, first of all, I guess you can make a case, Tim, that the Penguins actually did win a game on Sunday because it was into the next day.
Touché,
So
yes.
that was there. I think it's just the new coach syndrome. That's big. Dan Muse seems to have been getting a good buy-in from these guys, and they don't know that they're supposed to be bad. You've got enough young players there that want to go out and show that they're a part of this and should be a part of this, and that has the Penguins playing pretty well. If anything, you can also stir in a resurgence of Genny Malkin. That's really helped with his big bruising line mates. But beyond that, we've been feeling like some of the vets on the team are maybe not as into it yet as they should be, and the youngsters are carrying the load, and it's been enough to win some games, and that is why they have a similar record to the Pittsburgh Steelers right now.
So, Mets, when you do these West Coast games on the network, do you prefer having the multiple West Coast trips, or would you prefer to have just like 5 games in a row, knock them all out instead of having them dot back and forth?
I don't mind it when they're broken up, Tim, but what I hate is when there's just like a one mixed in. Late last season, we had one Vegas game late in the season, and it wasn't necessarily a full Western trip. It wasn't a full night out trip, and that annoys me. But if it's like 3 and then there's a break and then there's 2 or 3, it's okay. One-offs, I hate because it just completely upsets my apple cart when I've got to worry about stirring in non-media related work and everything else that I have to juggle. And 4:30 wake-ups aren't fun whenever you have 2:30 off-air times.
Yeah, I'm used to some of those schedules. Hey, speaking of upsetting the apple cart, what's the latest on Getzoff? How's he doing?
As far as I know, he's doing okay. I actually exchanged a couple of texts with him on the day right after all of that happened. So after the first night owl game against the Anaheim Ducks, and he said, weirdest thing ever, Mets. I'm okay, though. And they had Phil Bork and Jason Seidling call the second 2 night owl affairs against the Kings and Sharks. And I assume we're going to get Josh back tomorrow, which means Joe Brand will come back to us on the radio side. But we don't know for sure that configuration. But my guess is that's going to happen. And so far, it seemed okay. If you follow Josh on social media, he put out his question of the day ahead of both of those games. And he was traveling in a vehicle with Matt Venzel the other day doing a video. So I think that means that he's hanging in there and he's doing all right.
So did Borky pick up through osmosis all those years doing hockey play-by-play with Mike Lang? Did some of that seep into Borky's cortex as he switched over to the play-by-play side?
It certainly seems like it. Now, keep
Did he
in mind,
sell out and give it a, one of Mike's famous calls, like scratch my back with a hacksaw or anything like that?
2 times recently, Tim, because he's been pressed into action a couple times here in recent years. And, just crazy stuff. One time, Josh got food poisoning on air about
I remember that.
a couple years ago. So I got called up to be the analyst for Borky, and he called the third period of a Detroit Red Wings game, and I was with him. Then it happened once out west last year, and something similar. I don't know if they ate something bad, but Borky did channel Mike Lang a little bit, and he pulled off a get in the fast lane, grandma, for a goal call. I think Sid had scored at that moment too. And he said, Mikey was still with us at the time, and he said he asked Mike for his blessing in doing that call. But then this weekend, Sid scores against the Sharks, and Borky busted out a slap me silly Sydney. And it was like this moment where you just felt Mikey kind of came into
himself.
the booth for a moment. Yeah.
Yes.
And Borky said it was a cool thing because Mike, being from Sacramento, California, he was right down the road essentially in San Jose. And it was almost like a good thing being near Mikey's hometown, busting out a slap me silly Sydney. So Borky was all jazzed. But he did it, for being pressed into it, cold the first night. And then I know he had prep for the second 2 games. He did a great job. It's not easy to just step in and do that when that's not your key job. And he's known more for his, analysis. He's an analyst in the league. You got to kind of step back a little and let your guy to your right do that analysis of the play. And I think sometimes you get sucked into doing that, and he didn't. He did a great job. He still gave his insight, called the game, did what he needed to do, and we got through our broadcasts unscathed.
So, Mets, I kind of drew the Steelers analogy before joking, but there are some connections insofar as, you look at the wins the Penguins have racked up. Boy, the bottom of that Pacific Division is pus right now. The Kings and Sharks have lost a combined 9 in a row. They played against the Islanders that are currently last place in the Metro. They played against the Rangers. Have they scored yet at home, by the way? I lost track of that. Have they managed to score a goal at home for Sully yet?
You know what? I didn't check on it myself, but they had gone 3 games without a goal, which was an NHL record, and I can't imagine that Mike Sullivan...
you know what? Actually, Mets, I'm looking it up right now. They went to Toronto and they went to Montreal.
They still haven't, yeah.
They still haven't, yeah, because they lost 2-0 at home to Edmonton. So as of right now, going into tonight's game against the Minnesota Wild, the Rangers have not scored at home yet.
What's funny is they're still a 500 hockey team, and they haven't scored a home goal.
Right.
So, some way they pulled that off. I don't know how that's going to go for Mike Sullivan there. I know I said this to you a few weeks ago, Tim. It's a very similar situation to the one he left in Pittsburgh, meaning what it was the last couple of years. Top-heavy team. You got some names. Not a lot of depth scoring. Blue line is suspect, but he has a very good goaltender. So that's the main difference. You get Shesterkin into the mix. That could be a difference maker. And I just don't know how it's going to go. I mean, 500 at this point through the first 7 games, I think people expected a little more.
All right, so 4-2 to start for the Penguins. Why? Beyond what you were talking about with Dan Muse and his influence. You mentioned Malkin skating a little bit better. What else do you like that you've seen from them to this point that has allowed them to stay afloat here in October, where I think a lot of people were expecting the season to be flushed by Thanksgiving? It doesn't look like that's going to be the case now.
I think it's a couple things. First, you've gotten some of the star power, through the early stages here. I know Sid hasn't been as noticeable, but he's still over a point a game guy. He suddenly has 7 points, and it doesn't feel like he should, but he does. Evgeny Malkin's been great. He has 9 points through the game so far. He's looked every bit Gino Machino. That's made a difference. They've gotten solid defensive play, but I think they've still given up a couple of lapses from time to time. But the goaltending has been there to offset that. So when you have some star power, better defense, better goaltending, and then you mix in the young players who, as we mentioned in the open here, Tim, just don't necessarily know that they're supposed to be bad. I think that's really helped them along. Ben Kindle and Harrison Brunick have been outstanding. Philip Hollander scored his first career goal the other night on this road trip, and he looks like a guy that's going to be a player for them. He was the best player in the Swedish league last season before the Penguins brought him back, former draft pick for them. And I just think that that's really added a dimension. Plus, one thing that I don't think I've seen enough people talking about, and we've talked a lot about on postgame, everybody is playing a lot. It's not like different versions of this Penguins team where you just saw times in games where Mike Sullivan would bench a line or guys would only play 5, 6, 7 minutes. Almost every man is getting 10 or more minutes every night. The lines are being rolled. They all know what they're supposed to do. They're all hitting their assignments. And when there is a mistake, they don't let it bother them. They just come back and do better the next time. So at least in this first 2 weeks of the season, they seem to be pretty bought in to whatever messaging Dan Muse is sending their way. And it's worked. So I think that's why they're 4-2. Can they keep it up? I don't know. The 2 losses that they had in a row had me scratching my head, and I was a little bit worried because I thought they were going to start to spiral out of control. But the things that played into that, bad special teams and too many penalties, went out the window in the last couple victories here. They really tightened up in terms of discipline. They weren't in the box as much, and the PK got a lot better because they were letting up power play goals in those losses, and it hasn't been the case. They've stayed out of the box and then killed off the ones that they really needed to kill.
You brought up messaging from Dan Muse.
Yeah.
That messaging from Muse, what do you think it is? And do you think that was part of the reason why the bad penalties stopped? Because for all the tangibles, like how Mike Sullivan wanted to play it, what the structure was or wasn't, how much he wanted the defenseman to pinch or not, how he wanted to play the young guys or not, all those debates that became as tired as I think Sullivan's reign was by the end, all those media conversations and fan conversations. One thing that I think was lost in the mix was if you get to the intangible level of the players listening to the coach, maybe there's something to be said for change in that. How do the players respond to something new when things do go awry? Like, how does that coach get the message across to the players, and do they respond, whereas they might just blow it off because they've heard it a million times from the previous coach? Maybe there's something to that based on what you're saying about the penalties.
Yeah, I think you hit on something there, Tim. Whether anybody wants to believe it or not, I think the voice got a little stale. The messaging got a little stale. And we've seen that with this group before, where a coach sticks around a little too long and maybe they tune it out. Maybe they're not as worried about the consequences. In a very small dose, I think guys are getting it through their head that you're going to be rewarded, first of all, if you perform as expected. You're going to get your ice time. You're going to play. But on the other end, he's not been shy about pulling guys out of the lineup already. He's done it with a couple older guys. He's done it with a couple younger guys. Nola Chari responded to being sat down the other night with a really solid hockey game. Both Ben Kindle and Harrison Brunick weren't taken out for performance per se, but they still, I felt, pressed his hand when they got back in and said, look, we don't want to come back out of the lineup. We want to play. And they met their assignments a little bit better. I think he is just preaching let's all get on the same page. If you perform, I'm going to use you, and I'm going to use you a lot. If you don't, you're going to probably come out of the lineup at some point. I don't know that will go for the big boys because we haven't seen it yet. But really,
nobody got benched from the big boys after being -3 the other night.
No. They got
turnovers and such.
Well, and think about it, Tim. That's happened so many times where they've been -3 as a group. Each guy has been on the ice for a ton of goals, and there's never a consequence. So that's one thing that maybe we'll see if he ends up doing. But they're going to be allowed to do their thing. But I think everybody else is going to get in line behind those big boys and their coach and do what they're supposed to do, or they're not going to play, because he's done it to a lot of the other vets, the youngsters, etc., as I just mentioned. So I also feel like just a fresh voice and some new ideas seems to be working well with them. And that's a good thing.
When you said the big boys, what about the big line? Is this something that's sustainable or not?
I never would have dreamed that Brazeau would be the offensive catalyst that he has been. I feel like
that's just that he's inevitably going to hit like a 20-game pointless streak or something.
You would think so, yeah. But for whatever reason, I don't see. This is my thing that I haven't looked closely enough at yet to go see how he was often used in Minnesota. But he's a guy that in his Canadian junior days, Tim, put up a 100-point season. I think he scored 60 goals once at that level. And I know it's not the NHL. Don't get me wrong. We've seen a lot of guys like that score at that level and not really produce once they got into the big time. However, he has it in him to be an offensive player, and I don't know that he was always cast in that capacity with some of his other stops. He doesn't have the greatest hands, even though in close I've watched him go to the backhand a couple times for goals. Watched him make a great pass the other night to set up Anthony Mantha. So maybe just playing with a skill player like Evgeny Malkin, another skill guy like Mantha, that will continue to give him a chance to unlock that potential. But the interesting thing is, it was he and Gino that were putting up the main points on the line up until this weekend. You're seeing Mantha now maybe finally get a little more comfortable and look like the goal scorer we knew him to be back in the day with Detroit when he was there. And if he can do that with those two guys, that might just be a very viable line for the Penguins. It's interesting to see Gino play with two guys like that, just simply because he's never had wingers that big. I think the biggest guy that he played with previously, and he played a different kind of game, was probably James Neal in terms of just straight size. And these guys open up space for him. They've allowed him to play his game, and it works well. They already know where he's going to be and vice versa. They've done bank passes, set up bank plays to one another. That's been interesting to watch. And if you can continue to have Mantha progress and get better and have Brazeau stay even at the level he's at, which he's going to dip a little bit. He's not going to be a point-a-game guy in my view, and he's probably not going to score a goal every night. But if he can get you one every couple games, an assist here and there, along with the other two players doing what they're doing, I think that's going to be a viable number 2 line for this team. And it's something that I think is going to continue to help Gino play at the level he's at.
You brought up the whole Kindle and Brunick being scratched thing. I think it's over management. I think it's their, hockey version of what the Pirates are doing with Paul Skeens, like almost babying them to a degree.
Yep.
I get it because they don't want to wear them out. I get it because they want to acclimate them to an NHL schedule. But then why not? Have they said publicly? Maybe I missed it. Have they said publicly that they're going to be here for all 82 and they're not going back? Have they said that yet?
No, it's not been announced that way.
But I mean, that's got to be what they're thinking. Why they're doing this, right? I mean, why wouldn't you just play them for 9 and then send them back then, right?
Well, I think it's twofold. Think about some other situations. We haven't had many here in Pittsburgh, but I've seen it with other teams where you have that 9-game window. It only counts as 9 played. So they buy themselves a little bit of time for analysis. I think if you play 2-3 games, take a night off.
That's stupid. That is so dumb.
I don't agree with
if you're going to put this dumb rule on the books, make it to the point that it truly benefits the junior teams and get them back there as soon as possible. That's stupid.
Well, and I don't know that either guy is going to gain much by going back. I mean, if they're capable of playing at the level we've seen in the NHL, what more can they gain by going back to Canadian junior hockey? I don't know that it's worth the Penguins' while to do that. However, one thing to consider, they can go to the World Junior Championship and come back to you without going away for the season. So maybe the Penguins keep them around till December, send them off to the Worlds, and then bring them back after that, because that's one little thing that a lot of teams don't consider, because it still burns that contract year and everything like that. But I feel like both guys
deserve a long time. I mean,
they deserve to stay.
Yeah, that sounds silly to me.
And I've heard people say, they could gain a lot by going. I'm not saying that's the plan. For me, I'd have both of these guys on my team.
They're not going to gain more than what they would gain playing in NHL games, because they're playing NHL games. They're going to be NHL players.
Yeah, I think they should both stay.
I mean, like everything else that we've talked about is actually dumber than the pitch count thing. I mean, like the pitch count thing, I can at least wrap my brain around, but like every other rationale for it is silly to me. And like I said before, over management. And the thing of it is, Matt, it's like if they try to do this at some point, it might blow up in their face because somebody's going to get hurt. Like what? Chris Letang's going to go through all 82 this year, or like you're not going to see another injury or two at the same time to the forward position. So Kindle's going to have to play. I think it's. I don't know. As I said,
it's the Penguins, Tim, right? I mean, they're always hurt in some form or fashion, and it just always rears its head here. But I'm totally with you. I would keep both players here. I don't think they deserve to go back. If anything, later in the season, if you notice that they're wearing down in some way, which is kind of absurd for an 18 and a 19-year-old, but if they start to wear down, then rest them a game or two. But they both are capable of playing. I'm not seeing any wear in their game. They're skating well. There's some mistakes that happen, but that's going to come with young players. You need them to learn. They're a big piece of your future, and they're both performing at a higher level than maybe some veterans you have. So why in the heck would you send them back? I think it's ridiculous. I wouldn't even consider doing it unless they're concerned in some way with the contract aspect. And if that's the case, they won't play beyond 9 games, and then it's a moot point. But I don't think the Penguins, a cap team, are all that worried about having to pay these guys in a couple years or a year sooner, because they've never been reluctant to do so.
Before we get some comments here, last couple things. Other young players that they should be considering bringing up and when, whether that's Koivunen or Murashov. I don't know what to do with the goalie if you're just going to keep him down there. Like, tell me if there's a guy I'm missing that needs to be talked about. But the Murashov thing is interesting to me too, because if the theory was that you can't have him up here because he's going to be shot full of holes and his confidence is going to be blown playing behind a bad defense, but they're playing better systematic defense, then I'm more inclined to say bring him up too.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I get wanting him to play every night, and you have two NHL type goaltenders available here, and he is. He's been looking really good down on the farm. Murashaw's been great so far in the early going. So I'm totally fine with keeping him there for now. Guys I want to see come up sooner rather than later, though, Tim. Tristan Brose has been great. He has 4 points and 3 goals in his 4 games. Koivunen's looked good since he went back down. He's played 3 games, and he's got a goal and 4 points. And then Avery Hayes is a guy that probably should have made the team out of camp. He was really good, and they sent him down. He's got 3 points and 2 goals in 4 games as well. So those players are some to keep an eye on. We had a conversation with Nick Hart from Wilkes-Barre Scranton this weekend on Penguins Live Weekly. He is the play-by-play voice of the baby Penguins. He's their PR man, all of this. He's around the team, knows it better than anybody. He said Tristan Brose has developed into a player that plays in every single scenario for them now. He's a power play guy. He kills penalties. He's great 5-on-5. He's out there late in games. He's scoring the big goal when they need it, doing all of the things you want to see from a guy that was a homegrown draft pick before he makes his debut in the NHL. So,
you know what frustrates me about how they look at Brose? I think they constantly look at Brose and see what he isn't, and they're not looking at what he is. It's almost like what happened with Brazeau at Minnesota.
That's a good point. I mean, it's. I think everybody has precast almost every player in the Penguins organization and what they think they should be, and they're not recognizing when they maybe thrive or grow into something else. One thing that has popped to mind recently, we've seen so many players develop quickly with the Penguins leadership. Kindle, Brunick, maybe even Hallander has done so this summer. But what's going on with a guy like Valtteri Puustinen? He was the prospect for a while before they gained all of these other prospects. And was it a misuse in some way by the Penguins over the last couple of years with the shuttling back and forth? Or what was it that has him being still a point per game player down at the Wilkes-Barre Scranton level? He's got a goal and 3 points in the 3 games, but he's like almost not even talked about anymore.
Maybe
after
he was
being like an heir apparent.
Like he was Will Craig or something with the Pirates when he was their hot prospect because they had no other prospects. But that, to be fair to Puustinen, I've not seen him scoring the wrong goal yet, which would be akin to what Will Craig did, not figuring to run to first base. But let's get some comments here, Mets. We'll start with John, who says, if Malkin is a point-per-game player nearing the end of the season, is there any world where you would contemplate extending him, or would you just consider this a fitting final season for him and move on?
I would say it depends on his headspace in terms of what that contract would look like. If he ends up being a point-per-game guy and he looks like Gino and he's fit in with those 2 big boys who you're probably going to have next year, I would think they would keep them around. I would consider giving him another 1-year deal or something. It sounds to me that the Penguins are ready to flip the page on Evgeny Malkin. Now, granted, I will readily admit, and Tim probably can vouch for this simply based on our conversations over the last decade, I'm heavily more in the Gino camp than a lot of people, and I root for him to succeed just because I like him and I think he's a great hockey player. We all know what he's accomplished. I feel like he gets underrated by a lot of people in the National Hockey League, especially in recent years, because he's got the unicorn Sidney Crosby beside him that looks so much better at a year younger than Gino age. But Gino looks different. He looks like he wants to prove people wrong. He wants to play with a chip on his shoulder. He's putting up numbers right now. If he can maintain, I think I would at least give some thought to finding common ground on a 1-year deal if it's there. If it's too much money, it's not worth doing, even though they are going to have a boatload of money to use next year. But there might be young players that you might be blocking by keeping him around.
Or you could use it on trading for or acquiring young players.
Somebody else,
are coming available in free agency to trade market. But I'd say this regarding his question. My most direct answer to the question of what happens with Malkin is it depends on the rest of the team. If the team should find itself in playoff positioning and they've reascended faster than we anticipated, then maybe it makes more sense if he's a point per game guy to keep him for 1 more year, and then you deal with the fall next year if you have then more good players to backfill for the rest of the roster where you can afford something like that on a nightly basis in 26-27. But I think the answer about Malkin is more directly answered by what happens with the rest of the team.
You're right.
This guy, Brian, says injuries are obviously an issue, but I'd love to see a few games of Koivunen, Kindle, and McGroarty at the NHL level. Yeah, we didn't talk about McGroarty yet either, coming back from injury.
Let's hope he can get back and get on the team.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why nobody's talking about him. I see Brian, it's a good point by you. People are, considering him to be part of this, and I want him to be. He showed us a lot last year, and I hope he's not. This will sum it up, and I'll give you this one line. I said this to Staggy on during a break on postgame the other night when we were talking about Rucker McGroarty for a moment. I hope he's not going to end up being injury prone. And he goes, let's hope he's not Bo Bennett. That's what he said. And I'm like, oh, no, don't say that. And if Bo's going to somehow see this, he'll be tweeting about it because he loves embracing his injury past. But Rucker McGroarty being a leader, he captained a medal-winning U.S. team at one point, was a great addition to the Penguins lineup, meshed with their skill guys very well, didn't look out of place with Sid or Gino. I think it would be great to watch him in a combo that you just mentioned there, Brian, with Kindle and Koivunen. That would be a lot of fun. It's just getting him healthy. No one's really talking about even what the injury truly is. It just kind of popped up at the, in the moments of camp, and he was out of the mix. And I hope he gets back soon because he's really putting himself behind a lot of these other players now.
Ron says, I've been really impressed with Kindle. He doesn't shoot enough.
Well, I mean, he had a 4-shot period the other night to start the game, and then he only had one the rest of the night. So you're right about that. He probably could put more pucks on goal, but he's kind of a mixed player. I mean, he's a playmaker, put up a ton of assists in Calgary in his junior days, has scored goals though. I thought he let off a very nice shot when he scored the goal the other night, but he probably could get more shots on goal. Let's see if that comes with more comfort, more just growth in his role here in Pittsburgh. He's been cast in more of a third-line situation so far. I wouldn't be shocked if at some point something changes with an injury along the line here and they try him up with Sid at some point just to see if he can play with a player like that. And if he is cast in more of a wing-type role, he might shoot the puck a little bit more. But I do agree with your assessment. He could shoot the puck a little bit more than he does to this point. But I've liked what I've seen in all aspects of his game. He doesn't look overwhelmed. And when you get a guy at 18 who was looked at as a reach by many, including Tim and I, when we were at a Brett Michaels show when the pick was made, we were both like, what? They took Ben Kindle? Well, he looks like he should have been maybe in the top 10.
Talked about and heard about were on the board still. Yeah,
right. Yeah. And
hey, speaking of guys that were drafted that night with the Penguins, Horkoff scored a couple more times over the weekend against
great,
Robert Morris. Robert Morris actually played well against Michigan in the first 4.5 periods. Like that was a 2-2 game in the third period. In the first night, they lost 4-2 on an empty netter to make it 4-2 instead of 3-2. And then the next night, it was like 2-2 again midway through the second, and then Michigan just exploded. I think it was 10-2 the final score. So, but Horkoff, I think, had at least one, if not two goals over the course of the weekend, and he had 5 against Mercyhurst or something in the first weekend.
Yep.
So
he's really good.
Yeah, he's been playing well for them. Hey, one more I want to get to, Metcha. This comes from Bill. How many times has Mark said on this program that the agreement with the NHL and the CHL is archaic? It's insane. Let these guys develop if necessary in the AHL or the ECHL. Yeah, if you want to draw an analogy to the NFL, for instance, right? So the NFL, it's a tacit understanding and agreement with college football why it's done the way it's done. I'm surprised there haven't. Remember, Maurice Claret was the one who made noise about coming out when he was 18, but nobody else really has since then. Maybe it's because Maurice Claret didn't work out so well with him once he got into the NFL. But this is a written down, spoken thing, and I agree with Bill's sentiments that if you're going to play pro hockey, play pro hockey.
Yeah, I'm all for reevaluating those agreements. And if you look over the years with hockey, you first had to hammer out all of these different agreements with Europe and Russia, et cetera, because they were similar. You used to have to fight to get your player out. Look at Gino, for example.
Right.
They tricked him into signing another contract. The Penguins had to steal him out of there like a thief in the night from Finland, all this kind of stuff to get him here, and then fight it in court to get him to be in the NHL. It's not to that extreme with Canadian junior hockey, but I think the landscape is changing with young players in general because you don't hear, even though Gavin McKenna is a prime example, he's not at Penn State if not for NIL. So that is going to play into these decisions now as well. Will Canadian juniors say, hey, if we got a guy who's that good, who's capable of being in the NHL or maybe shuttling back and forth a little bit, maybe they'll make it so that they can serve as a junior team and allow a recall or ECHL, AHL stuff simply to not lose them to college hockey. because that's something that's now going to be in the mix. I know it's not going to happen with a guy that's already in the league, such as a Ben Kindle or somebody. But if you got to worry about losing them before they get drafted now, they may open the door to have them a little bit longer after draft if they know there's a window to at least shuttle them back and forth. So these are all conversations that could probably come up at some point here in the not so distant future, just with the changing landscape affecting all of these young players.
I just like the idea that McKenna could be making more than the football coach. So that just makes me happy.
Isn't it amazing, Tim? I wish we would have tried a little harder in our youth hockey days.
That's not going to happen. He's only making $700,000, and whoever's going to make, I don't know what they're going to pay to replace Franklin. But hey, Penn State's a hockey school now, Matt. So I think we're all aware of that.
It certainly feels that way. I don't know if you saw the story just the other week. They're fighting tooth and nail for the tickets for the student section. I think they call it the Roar Zone or something like that. They dole out numbers to the kids in line to say when they can enter the building, but you're not allowed to be seen until 4 p.m. on a game day. So they're hiding in the bushes and everything. And then a guy comes out.
You're not allowed to be seen.
Yeah, you can't be like waiting online ahead of time. So you have to hide, and then they scream, "It's open" or something, and everybody roars out of the bushes or where they were hiding to get in line to get the number 1, 2, 3, 4 spot in line to gain access to that building to watch Gavin McKenna and company play.
So this is their version of Krzyzewskiville for hockey, then, is what they're trying to do?
That's what it sounds like.
Haven't seen that. What I did see over the weekend was what happened on the San Jose Sharks Jumbotron. I don't know if you caught wind of that.
I did. And
How does that get through?
The only thing I could think of is the game is played on frozen water, and they thought they were referring to the fact that
you mean like it's like somebody
water.
They've got a program that edits out bad tweets or something like that. Like it was AI beating AI or something.
Maybe it got tricked because it was just referring to frozen water, and then the next thing you know, people lost their minds because it was Hispanic Heritage Night as well. So
yeah, if people don't know what happened in San Jose, it was during the Penguin game, right?
Yes, it was.
It was Hispanic Heritage Night, and somebody snuck in on the Jumbotron, like you tweet something to the Jumbotron. Somebody tweeted in, "Much love for ICE, go get 'em, boys."
Yes.
And people on Hispanic Heritage Night. And
it was like our Sharks love ICE or something.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah, our Sharks love ICE. Go get them, boys.
Oh, my God.
And
I can't believe that. How do they let that through?
Yeah.
You might be right. It might be like a program. It might not be a human being that looks for it.
Yeah, and they just assumed like, hey, our Sharks are thriving on ice.
Oh, my God.
What made it all the worse is Sharky to the right of it.
Yes.
Pointing and laughing and happily. Sharky with his big toothy grin pointing at the tweet.
I don't even know. Do you think Sharky even saw it? Like, you watch the guy in the mascot outfit's going to take the fall for this. Like when they fired the pirate parrot.
Lucky for Sharky, he probably filmed that once on Media Day, and it's just a recording of Sharky, so it wasn't new.
All right, Matt, appreciate it. We'll catch up again soon, all right? Thanks for doing this and filling in for Mark, and we'll talk to you on the Madden Show, I'm sure, at some point or another, and weekly here on the Breakfast with Benz podcast as well.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's always an honor to fill in for the great Mark Madden. It's big shoes to fill, but I hope I did him justice with the hockey talk. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And Tim, thanks again.
You got it. Brian Metzer, Pittsburgh Penguins Radio Network, joining us here on Madden Benz Unfiltered. If you missed our conversation, it'll be posted on the archive page on YouTube and on Trib Live, on the Trib Live Facebook live stream, Trib Sports on YouTube. And you can hear it again on the Mark Madden Show. I'm filling in for Mark. It'll be on the 5 o'clock hour. Thanks for listening to us today. Brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar. Meet me at Mike's.